The title of today's sermon, Red Pill, Blue Pill, is probably meaningless to many of you. For others, it will be a cultural touchstone. Red Pill, Blue Pill refers to a scene from the movie The Matrix. In the movie, the main character, Neo, is offered the choice between a red pill and a blue pill by the rebel leader Morpheus. Now, without explaining a hugely convoluted plot, the story of The Matrix hinges on the idea that reality as we know it is all an illusion. That we are in fact living in a highly sophisticated virtual reality constructed by a computer system that runs the world. Offering the choice of two pills to Neo, Morpheus says, "You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill and you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes." The red pill represents choosing to pull back the curtain on reality, to step into an unknown future. The red pill would free Neo from the enslaving control of a machine-generated dream and allow him to escape into a harsh reality. The blue pill, on the other hand, would lead him back into ignorance, living a confined, comfortable life, free of want or fear, living in a simulated reality. I know science fiction isn't everyone's cup of tea. Celia told me so this week. But The Matrix was a hugely successful movie. You could attribute that success to a stunning special effects that really set new standards for the film industry, or very creative writing, or very handsome actors. All of those are true. What's also true is that the film hinges on a philosophical question and a seemingly universal fascination with finding the key to wake up to a different reality. The movie The Matrix and its choice between red pill and blue pill presented a theme that shows up over and over again in religion and in philosophy. I want to quickly give you some examples of how this alternate reality fascination shows up. One of the older versions is in one of the two primary texts of Taoism. The story is sometimes titled Dreams of Being a Butterfly. It was written around 400 BC in China. The story says that once a sage dreamed he was a butterfly flitting and fluttering around, happy with himself, doing as he pleased. He didn't know that he was a Taoist sage. And then suddenly he woke up. And here he was, solid and unmistakably a man. In that moment of awakening, he did not know if he was the man who had dreamt he was a butterfly, or a butterfly dreaming that he was a man. The famous story is a cultural touchstone. It's the subject of countless pieces of literature and art. Like many of these stories, it's not just popular, it's foundational to the culture. Another variety of these sorts of alternate reality shows up in the early Christian Jewish movement called Gnosticism. Some of you I know have heard of this. Around the 1st century AD, Gnostic sects focused on personal spiritual knowledge above church tradition. And in their view, this is fascinating, the material world that we experience is flawed, it's even evil. And what we experience as reality was created by a malevolent lesser god of the Old Testament. But Gnostics sought the wisdom that could distinguish this lesser God from a true God that was separate and very, very different from the world that we experience. If you've heard of Gnosticism, it's probably because they were dug up in the Dead Sea Scrolls and part of that collection. So the goal in a religious life there was to see through this world, to understand the reality that lays beyond. Perhaps a little closer to home for us, I know you have all heard the phrase, "I think, therefore I am." Not many people can explain coherently what that philosophical journey is all about, and I'm not going to try to today. But one of the pieces that René Descartes uses to get to that idea of "I think, therefore I am" is a sort of imaginary game. He imagines an evil genius that could have designed a world a lot like the Matrix, where everything that he experiences is in fact a lie of sorts, that he doesn't really experience the air around him or the sky or the colors or the shapes or the sounds, that all of those are fabrication. Using a strategy of systematic doubt and jumping through a bunch of other philosophical hoops, Descartes discerns the truth, "I think, therefore I am." And that little exercise, including the imaginary evil genius, is really the foundation of modern philosophy. Finally, probably the most famous use of this alternate reality fantasy is Plato's allegory of the cave. A lot of you are very familiar with this. Written in 375 BC in Plato's Republic, he's actually quoting Socrates. He describes a group of people who are living chained to the wall of a cave, and they face the back of the cave in this blank wall. And they watch shadows that are projected onto that wall by objects that pass in front of the light that's behind them. The shadows represent the fragment of reality that we can normally perceive through our senses, while the actual objects casting the shadows represent true forms of objects that we can only perceive through reason. Of course, in his depiction, it's the philosophers who get the truth, right? So I'll stop torturing you with examples now. The point is, over and over again, we've been fascinated by the idea that what is real is something other than what we experience or perceive in our daily lives. And to awaken is to throw back the curtain and perceive the world as something radically different from what we know. Our theme in worship all this month is awakening. I think it's a wonderful theme. After all, we are in the business of transformation. It's actually part of Tapestry's vision statement. Our vision is to be a transformational home for liberal spirituality and a dynamic community leader in Orange County and beyond. The mission of our Unitarian Universalist congregations is not always clear. If souls are already saved, what are we doing here? We don't sell things to make money. We do justice work, but that's not the primary purpose. We educate and we learn together, but we are not a school. We have a great sense of community, but we're not a social club. In all this variety of activity, I believe we are here seeking transformation, a deepening of spirits and renewal of hope. We're supporting one another on a journey toward more fulfilling and faithful ways of living. We are here to change and to be changed, here to be awakened. But, this is a big but, the awakening that we are in the business of is not a radical, grand scheme of alternative reality. What I want to invite us to awaken to most is a wide-eyed presence to our world, here and now. Awakening to all the beauty and the challenge of this life. It's our birthright, after all. We have enormous capacity to think, to perceive, to feel, to see, to touch, taste, hear. We have all these wonderful ways of experiencing this world. And this world has enough inspiration and learning for 100 lifetimes, if we're awake to it. So let me give a few examples of how waking up to here and now is the challenge before us. For me, this calling to awakening shows up in navigating global warming and climate crisis. There are two really seductive fantasy theories that people are drawn to. There are those who deny global warming or who deny it's caused by human action. I am very clearly not subscribing to that alternate reality. I don't think anyone in this community is. I'm more inclined to believe in, to think, to sometimes act based on a more fatalistic view of global warming. With so many grim reports, it's easy to just say, well, it was a fun ride for humans while it lasted. We've succeeded in destroying the planet. Show's over. But I have a hunch that we get seduced into these fantasies because awakening to the reality of the situation cries out desperately for urgent work, and we do not like work. The reality is there is hope to continue to live on this planet for millions of years longer if we take significant action to stop global warming now. Humanity can thrive if we're able to collectively make the changes necessary. That is an incredibly humbling, both frightening and hopeful reality. It is no wonder so many people on both the right and the left ends of the spectrum cling to theories of alternate realities, rather than wake up to what is right in front of our eyes. The reality is that we have work to do. Perhaps the hardest arena for seeing things as they truly are is when it comes to people, especially people we love. I'm sure you've heard Maya Angelou famously said to an interview with Oprah Winfrey, "When someone shows you who they are, believe them." When someone shows you who they are, believe them. Now, in the context of this interview, it was women who had put up with abusive men for too long, but it could apply to all sorts of situations. And I don't want to suggest that people can't change. We can learn and grow, thank goodness, right? The thought of having to revert to who I was 20 years ago makes me cringe. I'm certainly not perfect, but I know I have learned a lot along the way. Growth is possible. Growth is slow. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. It's so very hard to simply observe the actions of someone close to us without expectations or feelings clouding our vision. Whether we misinterpret actions as personal insults, or we want so badly something better for them, or perhaps we've become numb to their behavior, whether it's good or bad behavior. It may not even be really possible to see the people we care most about without the filter of emotions, but I do think we would be better off if every once in a while we were able to awaken and simply observe the behavior of others as it is. When people are imploring us to wake up, it's almost always to agree with their vision of an incredibly wonderful or really, really bad version of reality. One late beloved Tapestry member was fond of the expression, "People are no damn good." I still hear him quoted today from time to time. And I hear people land in despair when things really bad happen. It may arise from looking at conflicts that seem intractable, or from forms of oppression when we deny that progress has been made, or looking at democracy that looks more and more like oligarchy every day. My response to that type of pessimism is typically, well, then, how shall we proceed? If it's broken, if people are no damn good, how shall we move forward? Deep pessimism seems like a really unproductive reality to wake up to. Despair is not where we belong. And it's absolutely not in keeping with our Unitarian Universalist tradition. In Washington, D.C., where I was visiting this past week, I was able to visit the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial there, and I highly recommend it to anyone who's able to be in the city. It's an amazing memorial. One of the King's gifts was offering a vision of hope that threads the needle between despair and blind optimism. In his letter from a Birmingham jail, he warned liberal white people of faith, about the dangers of blind optimism. He warned that for too long, good people assumed that there was something inherently positive about the passage of time. They assumed that progress was inevitable. He said human progress never rolls in on wheels of inevitability. It comes through the tireless efforts of people willing to be co-workers with God. And without this hard work, time itself becomes an ally of the forces of social stagnation. Blind optimism is as dangerous as despair. Both ultimately lead to shirking our responsibility to build the world we dream about. One, because progress seems impossible, and the other, because progress seems inevitable. So as we move into this month of celebrating awakening, first I offer us a caution. Be aware of calls to awaken to a totally alternate reality, or that we're fated to somehow a wonderful or terrible afterlife, or that we've been collectively fooled by some evil genius. I know when piled up like that, these alternate reality promises sound bizarre, but they are everywhere, and they are seductive. If only we had the key to unlock the mystery, life would be perfect. It's so tempting. Friends, our awakening may not be that flashy, but it is a real path of hope. So I invite us to do the hard work of awakening and staying awake to reality of everyday life. There is goodness here in our midst. There is so much to be grateful for, and there is change that we can make in this world. Amen.